I, 32, F, built my career on trust. It was the only currency that mattered in my field. My contacts were not just names in a list. They were relationships I had spent a decade carefully building. My husband, Mark, knew this. He admired it, or so he said. He often joked that my professional network was our most valuable asset. I never thought he would be the one to burn it all down, and for a woman I did not even know existed. The betrayal did not just hurt my heart. It threatened to ruin the one thing I had built for myself, by myself. He used my name, my reputation, to help his mistress get a job that would have put her right in the middle of my professional world. That was a line he should have known never to cross. He was about to find out exactly how much that mistake would cost him. Our life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. We had been married for 6 years, and the early excitement had softened into a predictable, stable partnership. Or so I believed. Mark was a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. He was ambitious, always talking about climbing the ladder, about making a name for himself. I worked in corporate communications for a large tech firm, a role that required me to be connected, to know people, to be the person who could make an introduction that opened doors. Mark was proud of my success. He would introduce me at parties by saying, "This is my wife, Chloe. She knows everyone who is anyone." I used to smile at that, feeling a small sense of pride. Now, the memory of it makes my stomach turn. The pressure on Mark had been building for months. His company had lost a major contract, and there were whispers of layoffs. He came home late most nights, his face a mask of stress. He was distant, quiet. I tried to talk to him about it. I remember one evening, I made his favorite dinner, hoping to create a space for him to open up. "Is everything okay at work?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. He barely looked up from his plate. "It is fine. Just busy," he said. The words were a wall, and I did not know how to get over it. I tried again. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" "We are a team," he sighed, a heavy, impatient sound. "I know, Chloe. I just do not want to bring it home. Let us just have a quiet night." That was how it was for weeks. Quiet nights filled with a silence that felt heavier than any argument. I told myself it was just the stress from his job. I told myself I needed to be a supportive wife. I was a fool. My best friend, Sarah, 32, F, was the first to notice something was truly wrong. We met for coffee one Saturday, a weekly ritual we had kept since college. I was telling her about another silent dinner with Mark. "He just seems so far away," I confessed, stirring my latte until the foam dissolved. Sarah looked at me, her expression serious. "How far away are we talking?" she asked. "Like, stressed about work far away, or something else?" I hesitated. "I do not know," I said. "He is always on his phone. He angles it away from me when he texts. He says it is work stuff. Emails from his boss at all hours." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "At all hours? On a Saturday night?" I felt a defensive knot form in my chest. "His project is in a critical phase," I said, though the excuse sounded thin even to my own ears. "Chloe, I am your friend," she said softly. "I am just saying, keep your eyes open. Stress can make people do strange things. But sometimes strange behavior is not about stress at all." I brushed it off. I wanted to believe in my husband. I wanted to believe in our marriage. It was easier than confronting the alternative. The first concrete crack in my carefully constructed reality appeared on a Tuesday evening. Mark was in the shower. His phone, which was usually glued to his hand, was lying on the nightstand. It buzzed. I glanced over, not meaning to pry, but the name on the screen caught my eye. Jessica. A heart emoji pulsed next to her name. The message preview was short, but it was enough. "Can't wait for our future together." My own heart felt like it had stopped beating. Jessica. I did not know any Jessica. I certainly did not know a Jessica he would be texting with a heart emoji about their future together. The shower stopped. I looked away from the phone, my mind racing. Who was she? What future? I felt cold, a deep, chilling dread spreading through me. He walked out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist, humming a tune. He saw me looking at him and smiled. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. The smile on his face was the same smile he had given me that morning. It was the smile of a stranger. My world tilted on its axis. He picked up his phone, glanced at the screen, and his smile tightened for just a second before he put it in his pocket. He had seen the message, and he had hidden his reaction from me. That was the moment I knew. I did not have all the pieces, but I knew my life was not what I thought it was. I spent the next few days in a fog of disbelief and pain. Every interaction with Mark felt like a scene in a play. I would watch him talk about his day, watch him kiss me goodbye in the morning, and all I could see was the name Jessica and the heart emoji. The man I had loved and trusted was a phantom. The real Mark was a man who was building a future with someone else while living a lie with me. The anger started to build then, a slow burn beneath the surface of my shock. It was not just the betrayal of our marriage vows. It was the sheer disrespect. The assumption that I was so blind, so stupid, that I would never find out. He was underestimating me. That was a mistake he would come to regret. I decided I needed more than just a suspicious text message. I needed proof. Cold, hard, undeniable proof. I waited until he was out for his weekly poker night, a night I now suspected was not about poker at all. I went to our shared home office. We had a desktop computer that we both used occasionally. He was usually so careful with his phone, but he was often careless with the computer. I turned it on, my hands shaking slightly. I did not know what I was looking for, exactly. I just had a feeling that if I dug deep enough, I would find something. I started with the browser history. Nothing. He had cleared it. That was suspicious in itself. I checked the trash bin. Empty. He was covering his tracks. But he was not as smart as he thought he was. I went into his email account, which was saved on the computer. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of cold determination. I was not just a wife anymore. I was an investigator in the ruins of my own life. I started searching for her name, Jessica, and then I found it. It was not an email from her. It was something far worse. It was an email he had sent to her. The subject line was "Fingers crossed." The email itself was short. "Hey Jess, I sent your resume over to David Chun at Omnicorp. I used my wife's name as the reference. She has a great relationship with him, so that should get your foot in the door. He will be expecting your application. Let me know when you have sent it. This is the first step to us finally being able to work together. Love, M." I had to read it 3 times before the words fully registered. David Chun. Omnicorp. He had not just cheated on me. He had used me. He had taken my most important professional contact, a man I had cultivated a relationship with for years, and handed him over to his mistress. He had used my name, my reputation, my hard work as a stepping stone for the woman he was leaving me for. The rage that filled me was so pure, so absolute. It burned away all the shock and the pain. All that was left was a quiet, deadly calm. I took a screenshot of the email. I saved it to a flash drive. I logged out of his account and cleared the history, just as he had done. He was not the only one who could cover his tracks. David Chun was more than just a contact. He was a senior vice president at Omnicorp, one of the biggest players in our industry. I had met him years ago at a conference. I had helped his team with a tricky public relations issue, and since then, we had developed a mutual respect. An introduction from me meant something to him. It meant the candidate was vetted, professional, and trustworthy. Mark knew this. He had heard me talk about David for years. He knew that my relationship with David was a cornerstone of my professional credibility, and he had exploited it without a second thought. The audacity of it was breathtaking. He had not just betrayed me as a wife, he had betrayed me as a professional, using my own success as a weapon against me. He was trying to build a new life with her on the foundation of the life he had built with me. I would not let that happen. I spent the rest of the night planning. My first instinct was to confront him immediately, to scream and throw the evidence in his face. But I held back. A messy, emotional confrontation would give him the chance to play the victim, to twist the narrative. No, this had to be handled with precision. He had used my professional world against me, so I would use that same world to deliver his consequences. He wanted to get his mistress a job?
Fine.
I would make sure that not only did she not get the job, but that the attempt would backfire on him in the most spectacular way possible. I was not just going to end my marriage. I was going to dismantle his plan, piece by piece, until he was left with nothing but the consequences of his own actions. The next morning, I acted as if nothing was wrong. I made coffee. I asked him how his poker night was. It was good, he said, avoiding my eyes. I lost $20. I almost laughed. He was lying about losing $20 while he was gambling with our entire life. The disconnect was staggering. That is too bad, I said, my voice perfectly even. Maybe we'll have better luck next time. I felt a strange sense of power in that moment. I knew the truth, and he had no idea that I knew. He was living in a world that was about to collapse, and I was the one holding the detonator. I had the screenshot on a flash drive, tucked away safely in my purse. I had the knowledge of what he had done. The game had changed. He thought he was in control, but he had just handed all the power to me. I went to work and tried to focus, but my mind was a whirlwind of anger and strategy. I needed to talk to someone. I called Sarah during my lunch break. I met her in a small park near my office. I did not want to risk being overheard. I told her everything. I showed her the screenshot on my phone. She read it, her eyes widening with each word. When she finished, she just looked at me, her face a mixture of fury and sympathy. "That absolute pig," she whispered. "Chloe, I am so sorry. What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. "I am not going to cry," I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my resolve. "I am going to handle it. He used my professional life to do this, so that is where I am going to end it." Sarah nodded slowly. "What is your plan?" she asked. "First," I said, "I need to talk to David Chen. I need to undo the damage Mark has done before it goes any further. Then, I am going to confront Mark. But not until I have everything perfectly in place." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You have got this," she said. "He has no idea who he is messing with." Her support was like a steel rod in my spine. I was not alone in this. That afternoon, I composed an email to David Chen. It was one of the most difficult emails I have ever had to write. I had to be careful, professional, and clear. I could not let my personal turmoil bleed into my professional communication. "Dear David," I wrote, "I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to you about a rather delicate matter. It has come to my attention that my husband, Mark, may have reached out to you to recommend a candidate named Jessica for a position at Omnicorp. He may have mentioned that the recommendation came from me. I need to be very clear. I have not vetted this candidate. I do not know this person, and I cannot endorse her for any position. I apologize sincerely for any confusion or inconvenience this may have caused. My husband acted without my knowledge or consent, and it was a significant overstep. I value our professional relationship immensely and wanted to correct this misunderstanding immediately. Best, Chloe." I read it over a dozen times before I hit send. It was humiliating. I had to admit to my most important contact that my own husband had used my name to lie to him. But it was necessary. It was the first step in taking back control. The response from David came within the hour. It was short and to the point. "Chloe, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate your honesty. Consider the matter handled. Let us catch up properly next week." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He understood. He was not blaming me. He was a professional. He recognized that I was cleaning up a mess that I had not made. The first domino had fallen. Jessica's application, which was likely already in the system, was now dead on arrival. The door Mark had tried to open for her had just been slammed shut, locked and bolted, and he had no idea. Now that the immediate professional damage was contained, I could turn my attention to Mark. I needed more information. I wanted to understand the full scope of their plans. How long had this been going on? What was their end game? I decided to do some more digging. That night, after Mark was asleep, I went back to the home computer. This time, I was not looking for emails. I was looking for anything else he might have saved. I checked the documents folder. There, in a folder labeled Personal, I found it. It was a budget spreadsheet. It was titled Our New Life. I clicked on it, my heart pounding. It was a detailed financial plan for two people. It had line items for rent on a new apartment, car payments, utilities, even a vacation fund. It listed two projected incomes, his current salary and a second salary, listed as Jessica Omnicorp, with a starting figure that was surprisingly high. They had planned it all out. They were going to build a new life together, funded in part by a job she was supposed to get by using my name. The level of premeditation was sickening. This was not a fleeting affair. This was a calculated plan to replace me. He was not just cheating. He was orchestrating an exit strategy. He was waiting for her to get this job, to have a stable income, before he told me it was over. He was a coward, hiding behind spreadsheets and secret emails. He did not even have the decency to face me. He was just going to wait until all his pieces were in place, and then drop the bomb, leaving me to deal with the rubble. The spreadsheet was the final piece of evidence I needed. It showed his intent, his cold, calculated betrayal. I saved a copy of it to the same flash drive. I now had the email and the budget. I had the what and the why. All that was left was the when and the how of the confrontation. I decided to wait. I wanted him to get the news about the job from her, not from me. I wanted him to feel the sting of his plan failing before he even knew I was involved. I wanted to watch him squirm, to see the confident smirk wiped off his face when he realized that the future he had so carefully planned was built on a foundation of sand. So I waited. For the next 2 days, I was the perfect wife. I listened to him complain about his job. I made him dinner. I asked about his day. I played my part so well that he did not suspect a thing. Inside, I was a coiled spring of rage, but on the outside, I was calm. It was a strange, out-of-body experience. I was watching myself go through the motions of a life that I knew was already over. The call came on Friday afternoon. I was working from home. Mark was in the living room, on a conference call for his job. I saw his phone light up with her name. He quickly muted his work call and answered his cell, his voice low and urgent.
"Hey, what is up?" he said.
I could not hear her side of the conversation, but I could see the change in his expression. His face went from relaxed to confused, then to angry. "What do you mean? They retracted the offer?" he said, his voice rising in volume. "That does not make any sense. They interviewed you yesterday. They loved you." He paused, listening. His face grew darker. "No, that is impossible," he snapped. "David Chen recommended you personally. He would not just change his mind. Someone must have interfered." He was pacing now, running his hand through his hair. "I do not know who. This was a sure thing. A sure thing." He hung up the phone and stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall. He looked completely bewildered. His perfect plan had just hit a very large, very unexpected wall. And the wall was me. I waited a few minutes, letting him stew in his confusion. Then I walked into the living room. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. He jumped, startled. He had not realized I was there.
"What?"
"Oh yeah, it is fine. Just a work thing," he said, trying to regain his composure.
He could not look me in the eye.
"It sounded like more than a work thing," I said, pushing off the doorframe and taking a step closer. "It sounded like you were upset." He shook his head, running his hand over his face. "It is nothing, Chloe. Just a project that hit a snag. Do not worry about it." "I am not worried," I thought.
"But you should be."
"A snag," I said. It sounded like someone's job offer was retracted. That is more than a snag. That is a disaster for someone. I was probing, testing the waters, enjoying the way his eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. He finally looked at me, his expression a mixture of irritation and suspicion. "How did you know it was a job offer?" he asked, his voice sharp. I gave him a small, cold smile. "I am a good listener," I said. "So, who is it? Someone from your team?" He was trapped. He could not tell me the truth, so he had to keep lying. "It was a friend's kid," he said, the lie clumsy and obvious. "I was trying to help him get an internship. It did not work out. It is not a big deal, a friend's kid." The lie was so pathetic, it was almost insulting. He really did think I was an idiot. My patience, which had been stretched to its breaking point, finally snapped. The time for games was over. The time for truth had arrived. I was ready. I had been preparing for this moment for days. The quiet calm I had maintained was about to be replaced by a storm he never saw coming. "A friend's kid named Jessica?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but the question landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. The color drained from his face. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. He looked like a fish gasping for air. "What did you say?" he whispered. "I asked if your friend's kid was named Jessica." I repeated, my voice getting stronger, harder. Because that would be a very strange coincidence, would it not? I took another step toward him. The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely. He was no longer the one in control. He was the one on the defensive, and he was completely unprepared. I could see the panic in his eyes as his mind scrambled to figure out how much I knew. He had no idea. He was about to find out. "I do not know what you're talking about," he said, his voice shaking. It was a weak denial, the last gasp of a man who knew he had been caught. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, letting him drown in it. "Do you really want to do this, Mark?" I asked. "Do you really want to stand here and lie to my face? After everything you have done?" His eyes flickered toward the door, as if he was contemplating running. "I am not lying," he insisted, but his voice lacked any conviction. I almost felt a flicker of pity for him.
He was so out of his depth.
He had started a war with an enemy he did not understand, and he was about to be annihilated. "Let me help you remember," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "Let us talk about David Chen at Omnicorp, a man you have never met, but whose name you seem to know quite well. A man you emailed earlier this week, recommending Jessica for a job." I watched his face as I spoke. Each word was a punch, and he was staggering under the blows. The last trace of defiance left his eyes, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. He knew. He knew that I knew everything. The game was over. Checkmate. "How?" he stammered. "How did you find out?" That was the question, was it not? The question of the arrogant man who thought he was too smart to get caught. "You are careless, Mark," I said. "You left your email open on the home computer. You seem to forget that I am not just your wife. I am a communications professional. My entire job is about finding and managing information." You never stood a chance. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. He did not say anything. He just sat there, a broken man in the ruins of the life he had tried to secretly build. I felt no satisfaction in his defeat, only a cold, hard sense of justice. "But that is not all I found," I continued, my voice relentless. I was not going to give him a moment of peace. He deserved to feel the full weight of his betrayal. I also found the budget. Our new life, very detailed, very optimistic. You even penciled in a salary for Jessica from Omnicorp. You were really counting on that, were you not? He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Chloe, I can explain," he started. "No," I said, cutting him off. "You cannot. There is no explanation for this. There is only the truth. You cheated on me. You lied to me.
And you used me.
You used my career, the one thing I built for myself, to try and set up a new life with another woman. That is unforgivable." He stood up, his desperation making him bold. "It was a mistake," he said, his voice cracking. I was stressed. I was unhappy. I did not know what I was doing. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash, Mark. A mistake is not creating a detailed financial spreadsheet to plan your escape from your marriage. You knew exactly what you were doing." Every step of the way, he reached for my hand. I pulled it away as if he were on fire. "Please, Chloe," he begged. "Do not do this. We can fix this. I will end it with her. I will do anything." I looked at the man in front of me, the man I had promised to love and cherish, and I felt nothing. The love had been burned away, replaced by the cold ashes of his betrayal. "There is nothing to fix," I said, my voice flat and final. "We are done. But we are not just done. You need to understand the consequences of your actions. You did not just break our marriage vows. You tried to damage my professional reputation. You lied to one of my most important contacts. You tried to use my name to your advantage. I paused, letting the weight of my next words settle in the air. So, I did what any good professional would do, I said. I corrected the misinformation. I called David Chen. I told him that I did not know Jessica. I told him that I did not endorse her. I told him that you had acted without my knowledge. And he, being the professional that he is, handled it. The realization dawned on his face, slow and horrifying. The confusion from his phone call earlier was finally replaced with a sickening understanding. He stared at me, his mouth agape. You, he whispered. You are the one who got her offer retracted? I nodded, a small, tight movement of my head. Yes, I said. I did. You tried to use my network to build your new life. It seems only fair that I would be the one to tear it down. You do not get to use my hard work to pave your way out of our marriage. You do not get to benefit from the reputation I spent a decade building. I watched him process this, the full scope of his failure crashing down on him. He had not just been caught. He had been outmaneuvered. He had been beaten at his own game, a game he did not even know he was playing against me. And then he screamed. It was not a yell of anger. It was a raw, guttural scream of pure, unadulterated rage and frustration. It was the sound of a man who had lost everything and knew, in that exact moment, that it was entirely his own fault. Why would you do that? He yelled, his face contorted and red. Why would you ruin it for her?
She needed that job.
I needed her to have that job. The selfishness of his words was staggering. Even now, caught in his web of lies, his only concern was for his mistress and their failed plan. There was no remorse for what he had done to me. There was only anger that his scheme had been foiled. You are asking me why I would do that, I said, my voice rising to match his. I was finally letting the fury I had suppressed for days come to the surface. You stood in my house, you ate my food, you slept in my bed, all while planning a new life with someone else. You used my name, the name I have worked tirelessly to build, to help the woman you were cheating on me with. You ask me why? You have the audacity to ask me why I would protect myself? Why I would protect my own career from your disgusting, pathetic little plan. The words poured out of me, a torrent of righteous anger. I was shaking, but not from fear. I was shaking with the power of my own voice, a voice he had tried to silence with his deceit. You do not understand, he shouted back. This was our chance. Our chance to be happy. Our chance. He said our chance, and he was not talking about me. He was talking about him and Jessica. The delusion was absolute. He had completely erased me from his own narrative, except as a tool to be used. Your chance to be happy was with me, I said, my voice dropping back to a dangerously quiet level. You had that chance every single day for 6 years. And you threw it away. You threw it all away for a woman you tried to sneak into my world through the back door. Do you want to know what I understand, Mark? I understand that you are a liar. I understand that you are a cheat. And I understand that you are a fool. You thought you could play me, but you just played yourself. He stared at me, his chest heaving, the anger draining out of him, replaced by a look of utter defeat. He had nothing left to say. There were no more lies to tell, no more excuses to make. He had been exposed, completely and utterly. Get your things, I said, my voice cold and devoid of any emotion. I want you out of this house. Tonight, he opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. Do not even think about arguing with me, I said. You have lost that right. Pack a bag and go. We can sort out the rest of the details through lawyers. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there amidst the wreckage of his own making. I did not look back. I did not need to. I knew what I would see. A small, pathetic man who had gambled everything and lost. The satisfaction I thought I would feel was not there. Instead, there was just a vast, empty sense of relief. The storm had passed, and I was still standing. He left within the hour. I heard him moving around upstairs, the sound of drawers opening and closing. I sat on the back porch, staring out at the yard we had planted together, and felt nothing. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life. When he came down, he was carrying a single suitcase. He stopped at the door. "Chloe," he said, his voice quiet. I did not turn around. "There is nothing left to say, Mark," I said. I heard the door open and then close. And then he was gone. The silence he left behind was different from the tense, heavy silence of the past few weeks. This was a clean, peaceful silence. It was the sound of a new beginning. My new beginning. The next few days were a blur of practicalities. I called my parents and told them what had happened. They were shocked and angry, but their support was unwavering. My dad offered to come and stay with me, but I told him I needed some time alone. I needed to reclaim my space, to wash the memory of Mark out of the house. I changed the locks. I packed up the rest of his things into boxes and put them in the garage. I called a lawyer and started the divorce proceedings. Each action was a step away from the life I had lived with him and a step toward a future that was entirely my own. Sarah came over with a bottle of wine and 2 large pizzas the night after he left. We sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by half-empty boxes. "How are you doing?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Really?" I took a long sip of wine. "I am angry," I said. "I am hurt, but mostly I am just relieved. It is like a weight has been lifted." I did not realize how much his lies were suffocating me until he was gone. We talked for hours. I told her about the confrontation, about his selfish rage, when he found out I had been the one to stop him. "He screamed at you for ruining his plan with his mistress?" she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The nerve of that man is just astronomical," I nodded. "It was the clearest sign of all," I said. "He was not sorry for what he did. He was just sorry he got caught." A week later, I had my follow-up call with David Chen. I was nervous about it. I was worried that this whole ugly affair might have tainted our professional relationship. I was wrong. "Chloe, it is good to hear your voice," he said, his tone warm and professional. "First of all, I want to say, I am sorry you had to deal with that. It was an unprofessional and unacceptable situation, and you handled it with absolute class." I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach loosen. "Thank you, David," I said. I was so embarrassed. "I was worried it would affect our working relationship," he chuckled.
Not at all, he said.
"If anything, it has increased my respect for you. You were honest and direct. You protected your reputation and, by extension, mine. I will not forget that. Now, let's talk about the upcoming tech summit. I think you are the perfect person to lead the panel on crisis communications." The offer was a lifeline. It was a sign that my professional world, the world Mark had tried to invade and exploit, was still intact. It was still mine. The divorce was surprisingly quick. Mark did not fight it. I think he was too humiliated to drag it out. We sold the house. I used my share of the money to put a down payment on a small condo in the city, a place that was all mine, a place with no memories of him. I saw him one last time, when we met to sign the final papers. He looked tired and defeated. He had lost weight. He tried to apologize again. "Chloe, I know I messed up," he said, his eyes on the floor. "I was a fool. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." I just looked at him. The anger was gone. The hurt was fading. All I felt was a distant kind of pity. "Yes, you did," I said. "I hope you learn from it. Goodbye, Mark." And then I signed the papers and walked away without looking back. I heard through a mutual acquaintance a few months later that he and Jessica had not lasted. Without the promise of the high-paying job at Omnicorp, their new life budget had fallen apart. She had apparently seen him for what he was, a man who made big promises but could not deliver. A man who would throw anyone under the bus to get what he wanted, but who folded at the first sign of real opposition. He had ended up taking a lower-paying job at a smaller firm in a different city. He had moved away, a man running from the consequences of his own choices. I felt a small, grim sense of satisfaction at the news. He had not just lost me. He had lost everything he had been scheming for. His grand plan had ended in a pile of dust. Life moved on. I thrived in my new condo, in my new single life. My career flourished. The panel at the tech summit was a huge success, and it led to new opportunities, new connections, new respect within my industry. I was stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth than I had ever been. The betrayal had been a fire, and it had burned away the parts of my life that were not real, that were not true. It had left me scarred, yes, but it had also forged me into someone new. Someone who would never again allow her trust to be so carelessly broken. Someone who understood that the most valuable asset she had was not her network of contacts, but her own integrity. And that was something no one could ever take from me again. He had screamed when his plan failed. I had remained quiet. In the end, my quiet resolve had been so much louder than his empty rage. He had learned what it feels like to be small, to have his future decided by someone else. And I had learned what it feels like to be free. The fallout from my actions was not limited to just Mark and Jessica. It rippled outwards, touching people in ways I had not anticipated. A few weeks after Mark moved out, I received an email from my now former mother-in-law, Martha. Her message was short and cold. "I am so disappointed in you, Chloe. Mark told me what you did. You intentionally sabotaged that young woman's career just to hurt him. He made a mistake, but what you did was cruel and vindictive. I expected better from you." I stared at the email, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. Of course, Mark had spun the story to make himself the victim. He had painted me as the vengeful wife and her as the innocent casualty. He had conveniently left out the part where he used my name, my reputation, and lied to my professional contacts. He had left out the part where he was building a new life on the ashes of our marriage. I took a deep breath and typed out a reply. I was not going to let her accusation stand. "Martha," I wrote, "I think you are missing some key information. Mark did not just make a mistake. He engaged in a long-term affair and meticulously planned to leave me. He did this while living in my home and pretending to be a loving husband. The job you are referring to was not just a job. It was a position his mistress, Jessica, was applying for by using my name and my professional contacts without my permission. He lied to a senior executive at a major corporation, claiming I had personally endorsed this woman. I did not sabotage her career. I corrected a lie that was told using my name. I protected my own professional integrity from a situation Mark created. What he did was not just a mistake. It was a calculated betrayal on every level. I am sorry that you are disappointed in me, but I will not apologize for defending myself." I hit send and then blocked her email address. I was done with the enablers. I was done with anyone who tried to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. The contrast between her reaction and the reaction of my own family was stark. My brother, Liam, called me the day after I told him everything. He was a lawyer, and his perspective was both protective and practical. "Chloe, I am furious for you," he said, his voice tight with anger. "But I am also incredibly proud of you. You handled that with surgical precision. He tried to play a dirty game, and you shut it down using the rules of the world he was trying to break into. It was brilliant." His words were a balm on the raw wound of Martha's email. "I just felt so used," I confessed. "Like my whole career was just a tool for him." "It was not," Liam said firmly. "Your career is yours. He tried to borrow its power, and he got burned. That is on him. Do not let him take one more ounce of your confidence. You are the one who came out of this stronger. He is the one who is going to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life." The most surprising conversation I had was with a former colleague of Mark's, a man named Greg. He reached out to me on a professional networking site about a month after the divorce was finalized. His message was tentative. "Hi, Chloe, I hope this is not out of line. I worked with Mark for years. I heard you two split up, and I wanted to say I am sorry for what you went through. A lot of us at the old firm saw the signs, but it was not our place to say anything. He changed a lot over the last year." I was intrigued. I agreed to a brief phone call. Greg sounded nervous at first. "Look, I do not want to gossip," he said. But Mark was bragging. He told a few of us that he had a plan to get his new girlfriend a cushy job at Omnicorp through your connections. He said it was his ticket out. He was arrogant about it. He acted like he was pulling off some great heist. Hearing this confirmed my worst suspicions.
It was not just a desperate act.
It was a source of pride for him. He was boasting to his colleagues about how he was using me. He told people about this? I asked, my stomach twisting. Yes, Greg confirmed. He was not discreet. He talked about how she was going to be making so much money that he could finally be free. Then one day, he came into work looking like a ghost. He was pale and angry. He told everyone the deal fell through because of a political issue at the company. We all knew what that meant. We knew he had been stopped. Honestly, Chloe, a lot of us were relieved. What he was doing was wrong, and it was giving the rest of us a bad name. Greg's call was a strange kind of closure. It meant that Mark's failure was not just a private humiliation. It was a public one. The people he had tried to impress with his cleverness had seen him fail. They had seen his plan crumble. They knew the truth, or at least a version of it that was close enough. He had not just lost his wife and his mistress. He had lost the respect of his peers. That, I knew, would sting him more than almost anything else. The months passed, and my life settled into a new, better rhythm. I sold the condo and bought a small house with a garden, something I had always wanted. I adopted a dog from a local shelter, a scruffy terrier mix I named Buster. He filled the quiet spaces in my house with the happy sounds of his paws on the hardwood floors. I reconnected with old friends. I took up hiking. I was not just surviving, I was thriving. I was building a life that was entirely my own, on my own terms. One afternoon, about a year after the divorce, I was at a coffee shop with Sarah. I was telling her about a new project I was leading at work. She was smiling, her eyes bright. You seem so happy, Chloe, she said. Genuinely happy. I smiled back at her. I am, I said. It is strange, is it not? How the worst thing that ever happened to me ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. It was true. The betrayal had forced me to reevaluate everything. It had forced me to find a strength I did not know I had. It had taught me to trust my own instincts, to set boundaries, and to never, ever let anyone else define my worth. Mark had tried to take my power, but in doing so, he had only shown me how much of it I truly had. The last I ever heard of him was a rumor that he had moved again, to another state, for another job. He was still running. I, on the other hand, was finally standing still, firmly planted in the life I had chosen, the life I had built. Not on the foundation of a partnership, but on the bedrock of my own strength and resilience. The screaming had stopped a long time ago. All that was left was the quiet, satisfying hum of a life well lived, a battle well fought, and a victory well earned. One of the most profound changes in me was how I approached my professional life. Before Mark's betrayal, I was generous with my contacts. I believed in connecting good people and creating opportunities. I operated on a system of trust and mutual respect. After what he did, a layer of caution settled over me. I became more discerning. I learned to distinguish between people who wanted to build collaborative relationships and people who just wanted to use me as a stepping stone. My network was still a source of strength, but I now treated it like a fortress, with walls and a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper was me. I remember a conversation with David Chun about 6 months after the incident. We were having lunch to discuss the final details of the tech summit. He was a mentor figure to me, and I felt comfortable being candid with him. I have to admit, I told him, what happened with Mark has made me second-guess myself. It's made me more guarded. David nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's a natural reaction, Chloe, he said. A breach of trust like that, especially when it's so personal and professional at the same time, is a deep wound. But don't let his actions turn you into someone you're not. You're a connector. That's your gift. The lesson here isn't to stop connecting people. The lesson is to be more selective about who you allow into your inner circle. It's about discernment, not isolation. His words resonated with me. He was right. Closing myself off would be letting Mark win. It would be letting his deceit change the very core of who I was as a professional. Instead, I developed a new system. If someone asked for an introduction, I would have a direct conversation with them first. I would ask them about their intentions, their goals, their understanding of the person they wanted to meet. I would make it clear that my name was attached to that introduction, and I expected them to represent it with integrity. It was a small change, but it was significant. It put me in control. It ensured that I would never again be a passive player in the use of my own reputation. My relationship with my own family also deepened. My parents had always been supportive, but seeing me navigate such a painful and complex situation brought us closer. My mother, who had always been a very private person, shared stories with me about her own struggles, about times in her life when she had to fight for her own sense of self. Every woman has a moment, she told me over tea one afternoon, when she realizes that her own strength is the only thing she can truly count on. It's a painful lesson, but it's a powerful one. You've had your moment, Chloe, and you met it head on. I've never been more proud of you. Her words meant more to me than she could ever know. They were an affirmation that I had done the right thing, that I had honored myself in the face of profound disrespect. The house I bought became my sanctuary. It was small, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, was chosen by me. There were no ghosts of a past life there. I painted the walls a warm, sunny yellow. I planted a garden full of herbs and wildflowers. I spent my weekends reading in a comfortable armchair by the window, with my dog Buster sleeping at my feet. It was a quiet life, but it was a life filled with peace. A peace I had not realized was missing until I finally found it. I was no longer one half of a couple. I was a whole person all on my own, and it was a wonderful feeling. I sometimes wondered what would have happened if I had not found that email. Would I still be married to Mark? Would he have eventually left me, once Jessica was securely employed at Omnicorp? Would I have been blindsided, left to pick up the pieces of a life that had been secretly dismantled without my knowledge? The thought sent a chill down my spine. The discovery, as painful as it was, had been a gift. It had given me the chance to act, not just react. It had given me the power to write my own ending to that story, instead of having it written for me. He had intended to make me a victim, but his own carelessness had turned me into the victor. About 2 years after the divorce, Sarah got married. I was her maid of honor. Standing by her side as she said her vows, I felt a sense of pure, unadulterated joy for her. There was no bitterness, no sadness for my own failed marriage. I was genuinely happy for her and her new husband, a kind and decent man who adored her. At the reception, I danced with friends, I laughed until my sides hurt, and I felt completely content. Later that evening, Sarah's husband, Tom, came over to me. "Sarah told me what you went through with your ex-husband," he said, his voice sincere. "I just want to say, you are one of the strongest people I have ever met." I was surprised by his comment. "Thank you, Tom," I said. "That means a lot." "I mean it," he said. "To take a situation like that and not only survive it, but to come out of it with so much grace and strength, it's incredible. Sarah is lucky to have you as a friend." In that moment, I realized that my story was not a story of victimhood. It was a story of resilience. And it was a story that was finally, truly over. The final chapter had been written, and I was already halfway through a brand new book. A book that I was writing all by myself. And I could not wait to see how it ended.